Being in the renovation business, you come across some really cool stuff from time to time. Like, for example, this old kitchen countertop that we recently took out of a kitchen we renovated. Now, you might be asking yourself, what could he possibly build out of this old countertop? Well, that's because you don't know Dick. Hi, I'm Dick, and I'm going to show you how I built that guitar out of this old countertop. So if you're ready, let's get started.
The first thing I did was I drew out the pattern on top of the old laminate countertop and then cut it down to a more manageable size. Then I cut out the shape on my bandsaw, and voila! Voila! I don't even know what that means. I traced the body shape onto my body blank, which is the correct thickness to accommodate the top and the molding. Now, a center line is extremely important when you're building a guitar because it helps keep the neck, the pickups, and the bridge all in line, which is extremely critical when you're building a guitar. Once I'd finished cutting out the body shape, I took it over to my sander and smoothed it out. I finished up the final details with a file and a sanding block. Typically, I'd make my own neck, but for this project I bought a pre-manufactured one. Using my center line as a guide, I mark out all the locations for the neck pocket, the control cavity, and the pickups. I made myself a jig that fit the neck perfectly, clamped it to the body, and then routed out the neck pocket. And it fit perfectly. I also made sure not to router the neck pocket too deep so that the top would slide underneath the fretboard. Then, using my drill press, I removed excess material from the control cavity. Placed my jig on top of the body, and then using my router, cleared out the remaining material. I repeated the same process for the pickup cavities. Because I need a way to get the pickup wires into the control cavity, I simply routed 2 channels from each pickup cavity to the control cavity. Because I'm going to be routering the pickup channels once the top's glued on, I don't want the router bit to follow the channels I cut for the wire. So I cut a few blocks and glued them in, and then cleaned up the pockets again for the pickups. There's a control cavity cover that goes on the back of the guitar, which I had previously cut out of the same laminate. Once I had determined the depth of the cavity cover that I needed to router out, I simply attached my jig with some 2-phase tape and routed out the excess material. A quick test fit, and I'm good to go. I drilled the holes for the neck screws and countersunk the back of the body to accept the furls that hold the screws in. Then I drilled a hole through the control cavity out through the top of the body for the ground wire. Before I could glue the top to the body, I needed to remove all the old glue. Once it was clean, I applied contact cement to both the body and the top, let the glue set up, and joined the two together. And now that the top is glued onto the body, I simply router off the overhang on my router table. I had a piece of transfer paper that I used earlier to mark where the cavities for the pickups were, and then marked the centers of those. I drilled a hole in each of those cavities so that I could drop my router bit into it. And then it's just a matter of routing out the pickup cavities. I marked out the locations of the pickup selector switch and the volume and tone controls and drilled those holes in the body as well. Remember that ground wire, you've got to get that underneath the bridge. And the last hole I needed to drill into the body was the one that accommodates the input jack. Next, I decided on a shape for the headstock and took it to the bandsaw and cut it out as well. I cleaned it all up on my belt sander and did the final finishing by hand. I don't particularly like the way these stock necks are made and the way they join the body, so I'm going to contour mine. This will give easier access to the higher frets up near the body. Much better. Time to mark the location and drill the holes for the guitar tuners. I don't want to use a store-bought truss rod cover, so I'm going to make one that matches the guitar. I sand the edge of the truss rod cover that goes up against the nut to 15 degrees. Then I cut out the rough shape and finish it on the sander. Next, I drill and countersink the holes for the screws that will hold it in place. The side of the guitar is going to be covered in a chrome body molding that I picked up at an automotive store. It's backed with a two-phase sticky tape adhesive, but I need to remove that so I can apply contact cement to it and get a really tight fit on the body. After it's been heated up, it comes off without too much trouble. Now, to get the right length of molding that I need for the guitar, I use masking tape to determine the entire length of the perimeter of the guitar. Then I place that tape onto the body molding and cut the length I need. I want to make sure I have at least one square edge to start with so that when I butt the two pieces together, they'll match perfectly. I apply contact cement to the back of the body molding and to the guitar as well. And once the glue's dry, I apply masking tape to the back side of the body molding. I don't want it to make contact with the body until I'm ready for it. I start at the center of the neck and begin wrapping the body molding around the edge of the guitar. I heated up my utility knife so that I can make a nice clean cut and match perfectly the two edges that come together at the neck joint. Then at the neck pocket cavity, I trimmed off the excess material and tested it to make sure the neck would fit. Then I drilled a hole through the binding in the location where the input jack needs to go. It's time to apply a bit of paint, so I masked off the body, sprayed yellow on the headstock and the body, let it dry. Then I applied orange, let that dry, and then sprayed yellow again. Once the paint was dry, it was time to rough things up a little bit. The big guitar manufacturers like to call this road worn and charge a lot of money to do this to a guitar. I applied an amber aniline dye to the guitar neck. I wanted it to match the body a little closer. Once that's dry, back to the spray booth for a coat of clear lacquer. I bought a set of open face pickups with this really cool cover on it that I knew I could remove. Again, I wanted the pickups to match the guitar, so I used the same material that I used on the body to make the new covers for the pickups. After I marked them out, it was simply a matter of drilling the holes and shaping them to the same size. Since I'd used the original covers as a template, they fit perfectly. So all I had to do was put them back together. I think they look super cool. And now I'm ready to start putting all the components together. I start with the neck furls and screw on the neck to the guitar body. Next, it's the tuners and the truss rod cover. I mark and I pre-drill 2 holes for the strap buttons. I've pre-wired the volume and tone knobs along with the selector switch and the input jack. So it's just a matter of dropping that into the cavity and putting the trim on. The last thing to do is install the pickups and make the final solder connections on the inside of the body cavity. With that done, it's time to close it up. Once I've determined the location of the bridge, I mark where the holes need to be drilled for the screws that'll hold it in place. And there's our ground wire. Now that the bridge is installed, I can string this baby up. Overall, I'm super happy with how this turned out. I think it looks pretty cool.
Well, that's how I did it. And you know what? I even had enough material left over to convert this toaster into a little amplifier with the leftover material.
Ooh! Ah!
And if you can't figure out how I did that, well, that's because you don't know Dick.